Rajong. Today is 14th August 2022, Sunday. I'm going to read out the book Critical Questions, Simple Answers, published by RangFraa Faith Promotion Society, Changlang, Arunachal Pradesh. Author is Executive Engineer Laksam Kimun, Secretary General RFPS. Introduction. Rangfraism is a reformed cult, mostly practiced by the Nagas of Arunachal Pradesh of Northeast India. It's a system of worship and prayer is based on the philosophy hidden in the mythology of Rangfraids. Initially, even the ethnic groups of Tangnu and Shangnu, Nagas of Myanmar, and most of the native groups of Nagaland also belonged to RangFraa faith. But unfortunately, most of them got converted into Christianity, and now they are feeling a sense of identity crisis. However, we are optimistic that in the long run, on realization of their original cultural and religious values, they will once again turn their attention towards Rangfraism. RangFraa Faith Promotion Society appeals, especially the converted Nagas of Tirap and Changlang district, to look into this movement without prejudice and try to understand the main theme of Rangfraism along with its actual aims and objectives. It is our sincere and honest effort to make our people flourish with their respective cultural and religious values. Nobody can flourish without the blessing of one's old parents. Similarly, no nation or community can flourish without the inspiration from its eternal and time-tested faiths and cultures. We should never try to erase our culture from the surface of the earth. Such act would be a blunder. It is not the faith and culture, but the social evil practices that need to be eradicated. And in fact, RAPS is doing it. We are sure, without a tint of doubt in mind, that what we are doing is right. We swear in the name of God that our intention is neither to harm anybody nor to destroy others' faith and cultures, but to strengthen them instead. We believe in coexistence, not in exclusive survival. We believe unity in diversity, not in unity in uniformity. We are indeed successful in our endeavor, for we do it with honest intention and pure heart. We desire that not only the people of this region, but also of the whole Northeast India should flourish, not only materially, but also spiritually, keeping our original identity intact which lies in our culture. However, one has to bear in mind that we can retain our culture only by adhering to our ancestral faith. The objective of writing this book, Critical Questions, Simple Answers, is to enable the readers to have some idea about the philosophy of Rangfraism and to share the subtle truth hidden in the mythology of Rangfraids with other religious groups. There are so many contradictions and unsolved questions or problems in nature, but for the Rangfraids, there is hardly any question that cannot be answered. This is possible only because of the fact that the philosophy of Rangfraism is based on principle of non-contradiction. Further, the concept of eternal gap in Rangfraism makes it easier to give reply to any critical questions. The reply to the various critical questions put forth in this book have been given from the light of the philosophy of Rangfraism, propounded in the holy text, which is in 2 volumes, Volume 1 captioned as The Second Coming of RangFraa and Volume 2, The Great Third Coming of RangFraa. Volume 1 deals purely with the mythological tales of the Rangfraites, while Volume 2 deals in detail with the subtle truth hidden in it. In order to have a clear picture of the whole system of RangFraa philosophy, the readers are advised to go through both volumes as they constitute a single text. Special note from the author: Man, an inverted tree. The phrase man, an inverted tree may sound strange, but it has a deep meaning. Man, as said by one of my friends, is really not a human being with spiritual experience, but a spiritual being with human experience. Unlike tree, man, being a spiritual creature, has his roots in the celestial region. The five senses through which human being perceives the external world are in fact the roots of man. However, the soul, being the main root that penetrates deep into the substance of all substance, or God, without which man would die. Just as the tree dies when its main root is cut off from the soil, wisdom is the food of soul, which is extracted through the roots of senses. Therefore, to be healthy, our roots of senses, which act as antennae, have to be receptive. But unfortunately, there are some people who used to put their antenna off, which amounts to the misuse of God-given power of reasoning. The misuse of any of His gifts is a sin according to Rangfraism. Wisdom or knowledge tends to infinity, hence to expect infinite knowledge or wisdom from a finite scripture is as good as to expect infinite quantity of water from a finite glass. Therefore, Rangfraism encourages sharing of ideas with other religious groups as much as possible. If the well-being of humanity lies in what one says, then we should accept it readily. There is no point inquiring about the biodata of the speaker. For the Rangfraites, which religion one belongs does not matter. What matters is whether one is spiritually mature or not. Spiritually mature is he who is perfectly impartial. To be perfectly impartial, we have to be just after what is right, true and good, completely free from prejudice and preconception. Man, being a rational creature, is supposed to be able to distinguish the wrong from the right, the true from the false, and the good from the bad. Even plants have the power to choose the required materials from amongst various minerals present in the soil through its roots. But man, despite being a rational creature, if can't discriminate what is good and bad for him, then the unconscious plant would be more intelligent than such a person. And what could be more disgracing than this? If we want to know the truth, we must be receptive, that is, completely free from prejudice and preconception. Otherwise, we will always get a distorted picture of the things. Therefore, we should not interfere. Let the things speak. This book, Critical Question, Simple Answers, is only for those readers who are spiritually mature. The author sincerely appeals the readers that his intention in writing this book is not to hurt anybody's sentiment, but just to highlight the realities. Critical question, simple answers. Question number 1. Rangfraism says that we should remain contented with what God gives us as the fruits of our hard work, how little it may be. Won't such views bring inactiveness in the individual, thereby hampering one's material progress? Answer. According to Rangfraism, we are born to work, so to work is our duty. And if it is a duty, we must not order for its fruits. Just as, for example, to serve our parents is our duty. If it is a duty, is it a wise thing for us to expect something from them in return? We should not demand even their blessing, because duty is a selfless service. It's up to them whether to bless us or not. To work with expectation is to seek sorrow and suffering. Therefore, Rangfraism advises the Rangfrites to work simply by leaving its fruits to the will of God and be contented with what God gives us as its fruits. Regarding hampering one's material progress, Rangfraism says that our material progress will be hampered only when we cease to work. Rangfraism rather encourages us to work hard. Only when we work, the question of the fruits of our action arises. Again, contentment is always associated with the fruits we get out of our work. Therefore, the question of inactiveness, thereby hampering one's material progress, does not arise. Question number 2. All religious scriptures are considered to be the words of God, and almost in all scriptures, surrendering of one's whole self to the feet of God is prescribed. Isn't it a fact that God wants self-elevation at the expense of human dignity by prescribing human beings to surrender to His feet? If it's so, how can we expect such God to elevate us? Answer. God does not cut off anybody's head to become taller, as we human beings generally do. God is absolutely perfect. Hence the question of self-elevation at the expense of human dignity does not arise. Elevation in one's personality is required only for those who are yet to be elevated or who are imperfect by nature. If my Father prohibits me from wrongdoings, is it not a suppression but guidance? It is not a suppression but guidance. Man has to surrender to the feet of the perfect, that is God, because the well-being of humanity lies in surrender. The more we surrender, the higher is the elevation in our personality. Here, surrender does not mean to surrender to the feet of the evildoers, but to the disposal of His divine laws, both internal and external. The laws of nature are His external laws, while the 10 divine laws of morality or the laws of the soul are His internal laws, which form the main doctrines of Rangfraism. Question number 3. Non-exercise of one's free will amounts to the misuse of God's gift, which, according to Rangfraism, is a sin. Again, it prescribes complete surrender to the feet of God. Aren't these two prescriptions contradictory? Answer. According to Rangfraism, man consists of two elements, celestial element and earth element. Therefore, the self of a man is also of two types, celestial self and material self. They are also called as inner self and outer self, respectively. The energy that flows from the celestial self is expressed as will, while that from the material self is as desire. Here both are some sort of likings, but are opposite in nature. For example, will is to give, to offer, to help, to serve, to sacrifice, and to renounce, etc. While desire is to take, to eat, to to drink, to earn, to accumulate, to acquire, and to possess. The will that generates from the celestial self is altruistic in nature, because the celestial self is the soul itself, which is perfect, complete, and full. Hence, the question of surrender of the celestial self to the feet of God does not arise, because it is God Himself. Whereas the desire that generates from our material self is demanding in nature. This is because of the fact that our material self is fully under the influence of the body, which is accompanied by constant changes. As a result, a deficit develops continuously in us. This deficit is expressed as desire, hence it is demanding in nature. The celestial self always guides us to the right path, while the material self always places demand and very often misguides us to the wrong things. Therefore, it is not the celestial self, but the material self that needs to be surrendered to the will of God. Hence, the exercise of one's free will, that is, to act on the command of celestial self, does not contradict surrender. Rather, it is the non-exercise of one's free will, that is, succumbing to the influence of desires, that contradicts surrender. Question number 4. If God is the creator of all beings and things, then He must have created the Satan also, who tempts human beings to do evil. If it is so, is it a wise thing for God to warn human beings of evils again after creating the Satan? Answer. According to some religions, all evil acts are tempted by Satan or evil spirits. But according to Rangfraism, there is neither Satan nor evil spirit exists as such. Hence, the question of tempting by Satan does not arise. The evil crops up in man not because of Satan, but because of greed, ego, and lust, etc. Therefore, Rangfraism professes complete destruction of ego, lust, and greed. Question number 5. On what basis Rangfraism proclaims that there is no Shaitan or evil spirit in this world of existence? Answer. One of the dogmas of Rangfraism says, God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. God has to be omnipotent, otherwise we cannot call Him God. But to be omnipotent, He has to be omniscient, because if He is not omniscient, He will not be able to accomplish the work which He does not know. Therefore, to be omnipotent, God has to be omniscient, but to be omniscient, He has to be again omnipresent. Otherwise, He will not be aware of what is going on in His absence. If God is omnipresent, that is, present everywhere, where is the place left for Shaitan or evil spirit to exist? Therefore, on the basis of this very dogma, Rangfraism proclaims that there is neither Satan nor evil spirit exist as such. They exist only in our thoughts, and that is due to our ignorance. This is the truth, because to deny this truth is to deny the said dogma, and to deny the said dogma is to say God is not omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, which is absurd. Therefore, there is no way out but to accept that there is no evil spirit or Satan or ghost as such in this world of existence. Question number 6. Some people say that if there is God, then there must be Satan also. Such as if there is good, there exists evil also. But Rangfraism is to say what Rangfraism is to say in this regard. Answer. It is absolutely right that so long as there is good, evil will also exist, because we perceive good with reference to evil. However, it is always not necessary that everything should have its opposite. Here, it is very important to note that opposite things exist only in this world of cognition and relation, whereas God is beyond the world of cognition and relation. It is the root of roots, the cause of causes, the law of laws, the meaning of meanings, and the foundation of all beings and things. Hence the question of its opposite does not arise. Question number 7. Isn't God crazy that He creates all sorts of irresistible temptations which misleads man and then wants him to avoid them again? Isn't He playing a vicious game? Answer. According to Rangfraism, it is the settled habit that forms the individuality of a person. If the habit formed in an individual is due to the influence of the celestial self, that is, if will is dominant, the person acquires godly qualities. But if the habit formed is due to the influence of material self, that is, if desire in the form of greed, hunger, and lust, etc., is dominant, the person acquires brutish nature. Therefore, it is the bad habit formed in our unconscious mind that tempts us to do evil. If we see from this perspective, we can neither blame God for the irresistible temptations, nor can we accuse Him of playing a vicious game. Here, it is worth noting that in reality, the material self also originates from God Himself, but at lower frequency in comparison to that of the celestial self. It is the will of God that both celestial self and material self, or their corresponding forces, that is, will and desire, should exist, just as the fire and water. We cannot blame water for possessing the power to extinguish fire, nor can we blame God for creating water. Similarly, we can neither blame God for bestowing us with desire, nor can we blame the desire itself for our bad habit or weaknesses. Desire is rather necessary to a certain extent. Without its worldly life would be inconceivable. Therefore, will and desire must exist, otherwise life activity will come to a halt. What we are to do is to synchronize them, and when once synchronized, the person is said to have attained Kechuhood, or moral perfection. The one who attains Kechuhood is called Kechu, who as a man is supposed to be 100% perfect. Question number 8. If God desires that man should surrender completely to His feet, then He could have created man in accordance with the similar laws that governs the operation of natural phenomena. But on the contrary, He bestowed the man with an independent will. Why? Answer. The divine laws that work on all beings and things under this universe are the extensions of God Himself, because God is the law of all laws. Again, God is the all-pervading pure consciousness. Therefore, His laws must possess some elements of consciousness. This element of consciousness behind His laws, though in varying degrees, is called divine will. The divine will behind the law that operates the objective world is manifested as tendency. If only the tendency were to act on man, then man will be not a man but an object without any feelings and emotions. Even the law that governs the animal is different from that of natural phenomena, because the divine will behind the law that operates the life of animal is manifested not only as tendency but also as desire. Hence, we should note one thing, that animals are purely driven by their desire instincts. Hence, no sin exists for them as such. But when man is concerned, the divine will behind the law that operates his life is manifested not only as tendency and desire but also as will. This will is purely an extension of his celestial self, and it is only because of this self-conscience has come into being in man. As a result, the question of sin arises. Since the self of man, as discussed earlier, is multifaceted and complex, the human beings cannot be governed by simple law that governs the operation of natural phenomena. If someone asks as to why man has been bestowed with an independent will and reasoning power, the answer from Rangfraism point of view is that the celestial self of man, being God himself, man has to possess correspondingly the elements like will, consciousness, and reason as the extensions of the attributes of God, like divine will, pure consciousness, pure reason, just as a son possesses some of the qualities of his father. Question number 9. Any being or system is composed of individual parts. God is also a being. Therefore, God must have constituent parts, and these parts must have existed before he assumed his final shape. He could not have existed as perfect right from the beginning, because he himself needed composition. What is the view of Rangfraism in this regard? We say God is the supreme being in the sense that God is the being of all beings. It is the foundation of all existence, which is infinite and eternal. Beginning and ending are always associated with that which comes into existence, but God exists eternally. Hence the question of beginning and ending does not arise. Similarly, formation and disintegration, or composition and decomposition, etc. are always associated with that which has a form, but God is infinite, all-pervading formless substance. Hence the question of formation and disintegration of or composition and decomposition, etc. does not arise. To think that man must have constituent parts which exist before he assumed its final shape is as good as to think that initially space must have parts before it assumed its present state. Hence the question itself is absurd. Here it is very interesting to note that according to Rangfraism, basically there is no difference between the space, Rang, and all-pervading pure consciousness, Rang. Space exists only in the concept, not in content. Hence there is nothing as such for which we should call space, because what we mean by space is the state of being empty, but in reality it is not empty, rather fully filled with the all-pervading pure consciousness, that is God. If the space is empty, how can we say that God is omnipresent? Question number 10. It is said in some religions that after death, woman, being the product of man, can go to heaven only by serving her husband. If it's so, what about those women who remain unmarried throughout their life? If woman can go to heaven only by serving her husband, then it is a matter of simple logic that women who remain unmarried throughout their life will have to go to the eternal hell after death, because there is no other place to go besides hell. But going to eternal hell just for a simple reason that they do not have the husband to serve is absurd. According to Rangfraism, God loves male and female alike because both are his children, and everybody, irrespective of sex, can attain godhood or fatherhood in life if one sincerely strives for truth with pure heart and unwavering faith in him, thereby shedding off all weaknesses of life one after another.